can see the purple and the streak, so
I'm not going to
okay.
edit that out.
That's okay. What, are you recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Hey, I got to make sure everything's in place. One of my best friends works very hard on this hair.
Well, she
I
did
have
a
to
good
show
job.
off Kristen Graham in Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
Oh, right. Whew.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh boy. So, can you? Yeah, I can see. Okay. I'm Ryan Brown, and this is the Unvarnished podcast, and I'm still in Boston, teaching at the Academy of Realist Art, and let's see, we're with Julie Beck, who basically runs the place. Okay, everything's recording. Okay, got you. Hello.
Hello.
You can hear me. I can hear you.
I can
We're
hear.
good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm going to do the introduction again because that was awful. I'm Ryan Brown, and this is the Unvarnished podcast. I am in Boston teaching at the Academy of Realist Art, and set it up through Julie Beck, who we get to talk to now, who basically runs the school. We met, was it 2017 that we had the figure painting competition here?
Don't ask me specific years because it honestly has been a blur for the past 10 years. So
well, the pandemic
probably
made
we had three of them.
Everything harder to keep track of.
Right. We had three of them. I think you were in the first class.
Yeah.
The first iteration of the
Yeah, so mine, we had Carla, right? No. Who was in it? It was me and Shane Wolf.
Was Cesar
Carla
Santos
Russo.
in that one?
No.
Oh, that was the second year.
Carla
Sorry.
Russo.
Jennifer Balkan?
Oh, man.
No, that might have been the second year.
Elizabeth Zanzinger, and
Yes.
she was there.
There's somebody else, and I can't remember her name, but she shows at Newbury Fine Arts.
Yeah. Anyways, great group. And it was super fun week. And I think it was it definitely was my first time in Boston. So,
Ever?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was amazing to have the opportunity not just to be a part of that, but to also see the city and meet you and see the academy. I've visited a ton of academies just out of interest, and everybody has their slightly different approach and how they set up their studios. And so that's always intriguing to me to see those subtle differences. But what I was first really impressed by here was you, because I mean the work was academic, so it was really on point. But small schools like this, small meaning not universities or whatever, small unaccredited academies like this are popping up more and more as people study, and then they go back to where they're from, and maybe they want to create a community, they want to kind of pass on some of the legacy that they just got, some of the understanding, the training. And it's also, can be a way for them to transition into financially into being a professional, can kind of be supplemental. But, a lot of them fail early. They don't last long, particularly because I think one, funding, and two, they don't have people with the energy, drive, motivation, and focus to run them. And I think that's what I was so impressed with you was you were a student here, right? Mm-hmm. At the time you were a student. Eric was a student. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I met Eric. And you just jumped in and grabbed the reins and did what needed to be done. And it's such a rare personality that's going to be willing to do that. What was the motivation for you?
Well, in a way, it was a selfish motivation.
Yeah.
Because before I took on the position of assistant director here, and before I came to ARA Boston, I had a different life, and it was not exactly an art focused life. I wanted it to be. But circumstances in my life and where I grew up and how I grew up and what I was exposed to, I actually had no idea places like this existed.
Yeah.
And so I ended up in a freelance career doing motion graphics and video editing and graphic design. And I liked it. I felt like it was creative in many ways, and I always love a challenge, and I like to learn new things. And especially later in the 10 to 12 years I was doing that, I was working with some really lovely people. But at heart, I knew I wanted to be a painter. And I had been self-taught for so long. And you kind of hit a wall when you're self-taught. And I knew that there was a world beyond that wall. And I didn't know how to get there. And a lot of the places I went to did not have instruction that could allow me to get past that wall. They were not even at my wall, which,
Sure.
you know. So when I came here and I discovered this place when I moved to Boston, it completely blew my mind that this even existed and that there were people working this way. And
How long had it been around when you found it?
the school opened in 2009. I found it in 2011.
Okay.
And so we were only 2 floors here in the school. But when I came here and I saw what this type of skill set, what doors it opened for me in terms of what I was capable of, this little glimmer of hope, thinking that if my work could be even that good, like maybe I could make this a career.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, instead of just kind of doing the freelance thing and when's the next job coming in and doing that day after day, all of a sudden what previously seemed impossible, which was having an art-focused life, all of a sudden it seemed possible. Like my work was much better than I thought it could ever be, and it was really exciting. And so a year or two into building my skill set and going through the training, the natural thing within our program is to ask certain people to teach just bargs, super basic stuff. And as a way of just training new teachers, but also like, hey, is this something you want to get into? Now, it was way less lucrative.
Yeah.
Way less lucrative than like what I was doing freelancing. I was really good at what I did. I was really good at it, and I was organized, and I was, self-driven, and I'm really hardworking. I'm super stubborn. So when
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was video editing,
motion graphics, and graphic design.
Okay. We'll talk about that after the podcast because I have some thoughts.
I have lots of answers.
I'm so excited. Okay.
So when all of a sudden it was like, hey, you might be able to like maybe make some money doing this. Now it's much less lucrative, but I really wanted to be doing art stuff my whole life. And I always just thought it was like, oh, it's just gonna be a hobby, or that's for other people who like grow up that way or have money. I had to pay bills, so yeah, I had to work a lot more hours to make a similar amount, but I just, cut back 10 hours a week freelancing and then did those 10 hours teaching. I made less money, but oh my goodness, it felt so much more rewarding because I was now able to take a simple skill set and a simple way of observing and in a way of understanding the world around us and share that with people and have them be like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. That's so logical. That's so easy to understand.
Yeah, you get to witness the same kind of aha moment that you had.
There's nothing, well, the only thing better than that is to have a painting that I'm psyched about that I finished. That's the only other like super high in what we do. So that was worth it. I'd rather work more hours and feel more fulfilled with what I do. And serendipitously, a couple of years later, our director, who was teaching here and running the school, she was moving to London for a couple of years, and she said, listen, we need somebody. She literally said to the entire school, we need somebody who's going to run the school. And at the time, Emmy was doing a lot of the admin work, and she just, couldn't take on the additional work. And I was like, this is my chance.
Yeah.
Where I can take all the things that on accident, all the skills I had built in my freelance career, staying organized. I love spreadsheets. I like bringing people together. I like interacting with people, and I love being a part of a community. And so it just made total sense for me to say, okay, it took me like 6 years, but I fully transitioned from working full time doing freelance work to finally creating a life that brings me absolute fulfillment. And I mean, even just today, it's so cheesy. I cleaned up my studio because you were coming. I cleaned up the studio and I opened the windows, and I just looked around, and I'm so thankful. Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps right now. I'm so thankful that, the universe put these opportunities in front of me at the right time, that it's a risk to say no to a really well-paying, reliable job and say, let's try this. And so I put my hand up, and I started doing the admin for the school, and it's a perfect fit, honestly. Yeah. Like, I love it. So
yeah, I mean, that,
and I get to paint.
Yeah, that answer.
I get to paint well.
Is what
makes me very happy.
The way you put that is what makes you so perfect for this, because even after now having done it for several years, you still view this as an opportunity you're grateful for. It's not, this isn't like the drudgery of like, I have to do this again. And I'm sure there's some of that, but,
I got to clean up the toilet that overflowed again.
Right.
I'm the plumber and HR, but I don't care.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, that's really rare. I mean, most painters want to come in, and I understand it. We had a lot of students, and I've had a lot of students help over the years as well, pitch in with stuff, and but there was none of them that really had the passion for it or wanted to take over like that, which I understand, because they want to paint. They just want to spend their time painting, and there's a lot that goes into building a school, maintaining a school, that is just not fun. I mean, it's a small part of why I kind of pulled back and stopped doing the full 4-year program, was because it was just I didn't enjoy it after 14 years.
Well, the other selfish aspect to that is that I know my relationship with income and money, which is probably not super healthy, but if I had to be making work that I knew would sell, I would not be fulfilled as a painter. So in a way, having the assistant director job and the teaching job, it's not full time. It's a lot of time, but it's not full time. And that the amount that I can, and I can teach more if I need more that year, but it's reliable to the point where I actually see it as a method of giving me freedom, which seems counterintuitive because it is a time commitment, but psychologically it's a freedom for me because I am free to make whatever I want, and I don't have to care if it sells. And and if that's the way that I make genuine work, and actually one of my favorite books is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it allowed me to, that book gave me a different perspective, and and reading that was so like
interesting
light bulb moment of, instead of seeing it as a burden, it is something I have to do to make money, but that gives me freedom to be uncompromising with what I make.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm reading your mind.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, when I started, I had the opposite mentality. I didn't know anything about anything, so I just thought, I've come this far. My journey was a little weird, but when it came time to like just commit to painting full time or go get a job, I thought, I've come this far. I've studied this hard. I've tried to figure this out for this long. Why would I try to do this part time? And for me, that was necessary, because I don't think I would have painted part time. If I had to work at Costco pushing carts, which I would be really good at, I wouldn't then come home and on the weekends paint. I just had to mentally be all in. And it was really hard. And I for years and years, I struggled with this fear of money, right? So much of what I did, I tried to make truthful and passionate and what I really wanted to paint. But a lot of it was based on, trying to figure out what would sell and the sizes. I had to consider the framing and shipping and how it was just. I mean, I've never been really smart about it and I have been pretty selfish about what I paint, but for sure there was a lot of time spent trying to figure out, how do I monetize this, and how do I find an audience, and how do I build that audience. And, it worked for me. But recently I was talking to Howard Ray's Gallery in New York, and he said the same thing. He said, he tells his artists, don't quit your day job. I know, like Todd Casey as well. He's got a full-time job and still comes home and makes these beautiful paintings, and he's super disciplined and dedicated and brilliant. And, he says the same thing as the Big Magic book, which is, if you have to, don't force yourself to rely on the sale of your creativity, because it'll change what you do. And I think,
and I'm just a miserable, honestly, like I don't mind commissions, and I will do commissions. And I'll do commissions, I'll only at this point take on commissions that I have a lot of freedom on, and it's got to be a Julie Beck painting in the end. Like I can't have it micromanaged by somebody else. And because honestly, like, I won't make good work if it feels like a job.
Yeah.
When I'm painting and I don't think this painting has sold yet, I'm 100% all in.
Yeah.
It's not a job. It's a challenge. It's a passion. It's a love. It's an excitement. It's a discovery. It's an exploration.
Yeah.
The minute it becomes somebody else, like that, I'm doing it for somebody else. It's a different psychology, and and it's different for everybody. And I know people who, what they are so passionate about is the act of painting.
Yeah.
And I, in no way look down on anybody who was making paintings to sell, because the act of painting is spiritual in many ways.
Yeah.
And it's just as valid as an experience. And, that's fantastic. I just know psychologically and motive wise, we're all neurotic in our own ways. And I just know as soon as I'm doing something for somebody else, I check out a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't love commissions in some ways, but
it does put you in a slightly different mental state, and not even just commissions, but painting for a show. The moment you start to think or wonder, okay, is this going to sell? How long is it going to take to sell? I had my first one-man show a long time ago, and I remember making the really, really horrible mistake of adding up what I would make if everything sold.
Oh, why did you do that? Why?
I way too much overconfidence.
Yeah.
I thought I had faith in all the stuff that I had done, and so I thought, of course it will sell. And it's a huge mistake, but it also, I've very slowly learned to just paint and try to make it as good as I possibly can, with the assumption that I'll probably own it forever.
Exactly.
And if I can stay in that headspace, then the sales don't really feel good to me. They don't, I don't find, I mean, sure, cashing the check or giving.
Sales feel like really awesome.
But
what I like about it is that it in a way validates. I have a really hard time trusting my gut, like in regular life. In regular life, I'm horrible at decision making and I trusting my gut on things. But in the world of painting, when I'm setting things up or I have an idea, like I know the feeling, and when that painting goes out in the world and it sells, it feels. It feels really good to cash a check, but it feels also really good that I know I'm doing the right thing in terms of trusting my instincts of what I feel like is a good painting.
I love that, but I don't, and I actually understand it conceptually. I just don't feel it. Like when somebody buys a painting from me, I always wonder, really? Do you really like it? I kind of don't even.
Is this a pity purchase?
Yeah, I don't even, I don't, it's a very odd feeling. There's no, the satisfaction giving the check to my wife. I love the phone call, hey, I sold a painting. In fact, I sold one just 2 days ago. I got an email from a gallery, and so I treated myself last night, a nice dinner. But it's fleeting, that's just, okay, we get to pay our bills, we get to put a little money in the bank.
But
it's
isn't
fine,
it all fleeting?
But it doesn't.
You finish a painting.
Yeah, but
and then
it's just not
great.
my source of.
So what is the source?
I get no sense of validation, or when you get a compliment or something. To me, that's just they don't mean it. When I get somebody's mean to me, that's I eat that up.
So do you have anything that is what's the good feeling? Because aren't you chasing a good feeling? Isn't what we're doing is chasing that good feeling?
I don't know.
Is it the completion of the painting? Is it the process?
Yeah, the completion, bringing it to fruition and accomplishing the thing you'd hoped to, or resolving something in a way, learning something. But I assume that it's just going to go stack against the wall and I'm going to enjoy it. It's just I feel lucky that I get to concentrate on beauty. I feel lucky that I get to concentrate on trying to make beautiful things. I feel lucky that I get to live a life where my job is to constantly have ideas, and associate with this to me is one of my favorite things about being an artist is the associations. It's the conversations. It's being able to travel and see new places and experience new things, and it's the appreciation of the human achievement that great painting is. It's being able to just constantly be aware of all the beautiful little things and the beautiful people and the interesting people. Like last night I talked to Ali Ringenberg and then her friend, an architect, came in. I had a conversation with her, and it's just fascinating people. And that's kind of the world that I'm in. I feel that's what makes me feel lucky is I get to create, and I get to do something creative. I get to sleep in. I love that. I get to kind of set my own hours. All of my efforts are going to benefit me and my family. There's that. The freedom to me is all of that encompassed, and painting is a part of that. But the sales and that to me has nothing to do with it. I'm just so. If I was not in the market at all, if I could just finish paintings,
right,
and store them,
right,
or give them away, I think I'd be more satisfied that way. Although people close to me would start to hate it after a while, just start turning them away. I don't want no more paintings.
My family is my biggest collectors of my free work.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I do think the commercial aspect of it is a separate entity.
Sure.
And I do and that's why I think the benefit of having something that pays your bills outside of the creating is very crucial for me because of what you're saying, those elements, which are the community, the exploring, the researching, the learning, like all of that is what is so exciting and keeps us coming back to the canvas every time.
Yeah.
And the commercial aspect is, and I agree, like if none of my paintings ever sold, I would still be making these because I have plenty of paintings that didn't sell before all of this, and I still have some of them.
Yeah.
But the commercial aspect, there's still, it is important to think about. I think for part of what we do is we're making paintings. I don't ever want them to sit in my studio forever because I make them in order for them to be objects that go out into the world and live new lives with people in their homes, in whatever capacity. And I have a hard time believing that we only make for ourselves.
Yeah.
The viewer is a constant thought, an element within the creative process, not in a consumer way all the time, but more as the viewer, the quote unquote viewer or audience.
See, and that part I relate to, and that's where I appreciate selling, is not necessarily the check cashing. It's like this year has been an odd year for me. I've done just commission after commission after commission after commission. And so I've gotten to know the clients directly, and most of the work I've sold directly. And so developing a relationship with the clients is exciting for me because we're sharing a passion, right?
Correct.
They're matching my excitement for painting, but when we talk, we don't just talk about my painting. I'm like, oh, you got to look at my friend who paints this, and oh, you'd love this artist, and you'd love this artist, and then they ask me, have you heard of this guy or this painter or whatever, and so that's exciting to share a passion with a collector.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the sell for me, but the relationships that are really cool. And
I'm always interested to. I agree. I agree with that in terms of the relationship to me. There's been times I've sold through galleries and I've had the extreme benefit of either being there at the opening when they buy it or just developing a relationship with somebody. And it's it's not only exciting, but it's very meaningful to have a connection like that with somebody and then also develop that relationship. Like really what we're in this in a way as creators as a partnership with the collectors or the audience, right? Like we can't do this without them, but they also, it's so interesting to hear from different collectors. And I have a thing brewing. I actually have local friends who are avid art collectors, and to hear them talk about what they collect and why it's meaningful is so cool. And I've actually had people come who I've met on Instagram, and they've come through and they talk about the things they love about the pieces they've collected and their relationships with the artists. Yeah. And they're just as passionate about surrounding themselves with that in their collections as we are about painting them.
Right.
And it's a shared relationship in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm more of a born collector than a born artist, because like I'm just so passionate about other artists and their work and what they're doing and what their motivations are and their stories and how they got there, like little decisions, little aha moments. So like it all kind of like adds up to create like all the happenstance that brought them where they are today, right? Mm-hmm. That leads to them being interested in what they're interested in, making the paintings that they're making, but that all of those little moments that lead to them saying, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to dedicate to this, and I think I can do it. And then all the moments that lead up to like the actual dedication, the sacrifices that are necessary, the time spent, just the effort, all of it. You know, I'm fascinated by people that ultimately bet on themselves and make it work, because it's just not the typical route
Yeah.
that people take. So, I'm very lucky that I feel very lucky to associate with all those kinds of people. So, okay. And I'm sorry, we started by introducing you as like the ARA, whatever. But you're a brilliant artist. And so I know you can paint portraits. You got a beautiful self-portrait back here.
It's okay.
And
It's not a successful portrait.
no,
And it's not for me. I mean, it's a good paint. It's a decent painting, but it's not successful. And
well,
thank you.
okay, I think it is. I love it. But your subject matter is typically still life,
Yes.
right? And you're doing it all from life.
Yeah. No, not all for mine.
Okay.
I have done figures and portraits. I typically only do them when I feel I need to. It usually tends to be social commentary or like either a political statement or just something where I just feel like this image needs to be out there and it's more of a reaction. My still life is just natural in terms of not execution, but it's natural. I'm just drawn to it. I love it. I feel very fortunate that I love still life because I don't have to pay a model or find models. Yeah. And I'm really bad at anatomy. Still life. Most of the stuff I do is mostly from life, but I've definitely dove a bit more into combining references or changing and modifying a little surrealism, a little working invented in some ways. But I'd prefer to work from life if I can, but I can't always get like, an ocean in here or an elephant. Sure. So I'll work from invented reference or cobbled Frankenstein reference if I need to.
Yeah. And how did you develop where does the interest come from? How did you arrive at this sort of aesthetic? What's the motivation behind? Because some of them are kind of quirky. Some of them are maybe a little bit more thought-provoking. Mm-hmm. How do you come to that?
That's a good question. It depends on, I call it the seed of the idea. Quirky is actually a really good term that I think would encompass a lot of my work. Those who have met me in person can attest that I am a little quirky. And the quirkiness comes from a sense of humor. I love the absurd. Like we're meat sacks with skeletons like walking around a rock flying through space, right? Yeah. It's all ridiculous. When you think about it, everything we do is ridiculous as human beings. But we find reason and purpose in our lives. And there's something about still life that I think is still very human. I mean, everything I typically use is both man-made or in a way we relate to. So objects have always been very meaningful to me. I tend to be a collector. We have a rule in our new house. My husband says that there's no knickknacks allowed in our new house. If they are in the house, they have to be contained in like those glass jars. Because if left unchecked, if you've seen my studio, it will end up as a sentimental knickknack hoarding situation. And, you could go into the psychology of it. Is it that I'm trying to hold on to things in which have meaning, even though they remind me of people who maybe are gone now. So I do believe that the objects we make or that we associate with have intrinsic properties, that are meaningful in different ways to each of us. And so what I love is when I put a a thing together, and whether it's related by the seed is either a theme or it just starts out with a color scheme and it ends up as something kind of interesting and thought-provoking, it usually ends up as something different than it started as an idea. And I usually discover that through the painting process. So I'll set something up. I'm like, this is cool. I really like this. I don't really know why I like it. And spend 100 hours with something and you're going to find some deeper connection to why that was interesting.
Yeah.
And
it gains meaning through the process.
Meaning not only through the process, but sometimes I slap a title on it and holy moly.
Yeah.
That's what it was about all along. And
you kind of discover that through making, right?
And what's really fun is if I have somebody else look at the same thing, they're going to have completely different associations and see it in a totally different way because of their past, their perceptions, their associations. It becomes every painting is a million paintings depending on who's looking at it.
Yeah, everyone brings their own experience and perspective.
Yeah, so I do find it really important to include some ambiguity into what it is. It can be one thing, but you spend more time with it and you start to think maybe it's not that thing. Yeah. I like a painting to unfold over time and experience. And I don't know, still life just seemed it just seems so natural for me because I do tend to get really sentimental about really stupid, weird, like rocks I pick up. Like, oh, I was visiting my sister and like I really liked this rock, and there's this weird lion figurine I found on the ground by my car when we went hiking that one time. Like, it's just really random things, but put them all together and and there's a narrative behind them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just weird stuff. Sometimes I just like to do things because it's weird.
Yeah. That's valid. Well, it's interesting because you know, a lot of people come out of the academies, and as part of academic training, you do, you know, shadow box still lives, and you kind of get into the world of Emil Carlsen and Chardin, and then there's, you know, today there's, you know, some brilliant still life painters that are kind of in that vein, like Sarah Lamb and Justin Wood, and so there's you know, plenty of examples of you know, gorgeous traditional still life to emulate, and there's plenty you know, to emulate it within that because they're amazing. But your still lives just have a completely different, unique feel to them that is totally unexpected. And so, I mean, that's pretty bold, I think, because you're not relying on the tried and true, the trusted, expected, whatever, you know, roses on a vase on a doily. You know what I'm saying? So the unexpected. I love to get into the kind of the psychology behind it and understanding why people are drawn to certain things. And the objects I use are all, and the method and the approach I use is realism. So it's familiar across most cultures, right? Everything is recognizable to the most part. So there's a familiarity. Right. So familiarity, if you have too much familiarity and you've seen it before and it's expected, it becomes boring. Sure.
Right. So what I enjoy, and all this is boils down to creative problem solving, is connecting new dots. It's putting something unexpected, putting something unfamiliar within the familiar. You both have the comfort of the familiar, but you also have the excitement and the adventure of the unexpected. Yeah. So that's something that I look for constantly, and it can take me, you know, I've been trying to set up the same still life for like a year, and every time I go to do it, it's just not working. And so I'll take forever. If it's expected, if it just seems like that's the obvious answer, absolutely not. Yeah. I'm looking for something that, you know, I need to try a different background. So I'm going to put this piece of I need a different color back here, so I'll put a piece of cardboard. But the cardboard has some tear in it and a piece of tape on it, and it kind of works. I don't really know why. There's no reason for it to be here, but visually, like I have to trust my gut, and I'm trusting it. I'm like, there's something kind of interesting there. I don't know if it's a texture thing. I don't know if it's a shape thing, but this painting that I'm sending off to RLS for their Birds and the Bees show, it literally just started with, let's pull all my green stuff together. And then it became something totally unexpected, and putting the cardboard in there, and there's no reason for the cardboard to be in there, but there's a weight to it that it's like it wouldn't be the same painting without it. Like,
Sure.
it wouldn't be the same. So I get a little spiritual about it. I get a little like woo woo in the setup process, because for me, that's where all of my creativity happens. That's where the, like, quote unquote magic, or the associations, or the connecting of the dots happens. It's during the setup. The process can be a little exploration in terms of how to achieve this and how to create that. And it's problem solving too, but it's more technical problem solving. But the composition and design and setup is, to me, worth every second of the week, the year that it takes to set it up and to get it so it feels like I get the goosebumps.
Yeah.
If I get the goosebumps, I know it's ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's interesting to me because I don't really do still life. I've done very few. I didn't really do hardly any at the Academy. I got because I didn't do very many, I got, no instruction on how to even approach it or think about it. And so it's just, I never really went down that road. I never have wrapped my head around it or tried to attack those problems, or even really let my imagination run into that world. No, I haven't taught any still life workshops. I don't think I'd have the confidence.
It's a different space.
It is.
It's a different
completely
space, not only just like physically within a composition. Like, to have a human or a portrait, like, even if you're doing like a small thing, there's the concept of physical space in there.
Yeah.
And with still life, and this goes for, like, if you go through my entire life, I really like I like to be close, and I like a very intimate space. I like to be present. I want to get to know you. I want to get to know you, like, in a deep way. Like, I like the close, intimate space. And I think still life, because of the scale, I mean, you can have huge still lifes and everything,
Sure.
but most of the time, you look at most of my compositions, there's a very digestible space in which you can experience it. With figure, you've got the presence of, like, a larger space, and you kind of need more space, and there's a different scale to it.
Yeah.
And I do think that does have something to do with it. I mean, every house I've had has been small, and I like just being in a nice, cozy, small space, and my studio is also very small. So I'm okay in a confined, kind of warm space. And I do think that has something to do with maybe why I'm drawn more towards still life than the larger, heavier psychology of having humans,
Sure.
people, personalities, landscape, right? That, like, every landscape I've done is like a bush that I've liked. Any landscape I've done that I've liked has been like a bush.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very, I treat those things like I do still lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And
Am I yelling into this? I hope not.
No, you're doing great. Can we get more wine?
What do you need?
More
More.
wine.
You need more
Can
wine?
I get up and get
Oh,
it?
yes, you can get more wine. This is the intermission part in which Ryan gets more wine.
I don't usually like white wine, but that's really good.
That wine might be left over from the figure painting competition.
Well,
Just say it.
that's good.
I could use some more wine too. Thank you.
Can I put it here?
Yes. On my painting in reality book. Recommended by Anthony Mastromateo. It's a good book. It's a very cerebral book, but it's very good.
Okay. I had a thought there at the end when you're talking, because I think although I don't do still life typically, I don't have a lot of confidence in still life.
I couldn't see you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have a lot of confidence in still life, and have not allowed my mind to really travel down that road too far. I'm drawn to the paintings themselves that others do, and I love the still lifes of Tony Sierra and Justin and
stuff.
Justin Wood and Sarah Lamb, but I find myself more drawn just from my own aesthetic to say like a Travis Schlott. Or sometimes like Michael Klein did all those years ago, sort of outdoor still lives where it was, and Travis will like, it's almost like he was, walking to the bathroom and he looked over and there was a little sculpture on the stand and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." And then he sets up and paints it at sometimes at this odd angle. And it's so like, it's like he kind of came upon a scene, right? And it's not a setup; it's a discovery.
Yeah.
And to me, yours have kind of a similar feel to that.
You don't think it's like the total opposite?
Well,
it's
different. It's different. It's definitely set up.
Yeah.
But it's there. It's almost like, in some ways, a Where's Waldo of discovery,
Yes.
right? It's
That's interesting that you say that, because Where's Waldo is one of my seed ideas I have right now.
There you go. See, we're reading each other's minds. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of it's just not like here's an object, here's a flower, here's a here's something that you have to figure out. There's a narrative. It's not a puzzle, but there's something to it that is demands
time
and time for discovery.
Yeah.
You really have to spend time looking at what's going on. But from a technical standpoint, you get to also, as a painter, I get to also be like, holy shit, look at look at the textures she captured, look at the, the vibrancy of the colors, just the way, technically everything is handled. But then the objects themselves, quirky is a tough line to walk, because it can get too kind of silly.
Yeah.
Real quick. It can get to kind of like contrived real quick, and yours never really comes even close to that line. I feel like it's always just constantly interesting, and I want to dive into it more. And the best thing about that, obviously, is that's what you want your painting to be. You want somebody's going to live with this. So if they ever pass by it one day and they're like, I think maybe I need to replace that. I'm kind of getting bored with that.
Into the bathroom.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No, I don't.
And I don't.
I mean, if it hangs in the bathroom and it's a very nice bathroom, and then I'm okay. But
yeah. I just noticed your do epic shit thing.
Yeah, my friend Tim Rackrich, he's a student here. That's his motto.
Shane Wolf's trying. Did he try to trademark it or something? I can't remember.
Do epic shit?
Yeah, he's trying. Yeah, that's his thing, man.
I don't know.
And he does.
Tim, get on it.
Man, Shane does some insane.
He does some epic shit.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
His whole life is epic.
Yeah, I have a very non-epic life.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. But so in terms of still life, even though it's not something I do, I'm intrigued by it when it's done as well as you do it,
Well, thank you.
because it's, I mean, that's, I think a lot of times that's the art I love the most, is the stuff I can't do. I feel like, I remember talking to Jeremy Lipking once years ago. I think we were hanging out with our families at Disneyland or something, and I can't even remember what the situation was, but I was like, we got to trade sometime. I'd love one of your paintings. And he's like, I can't remember what his response was, but I know at some point later in the conversation, he's like, I don't know if I want to trade for something I can paint better. And it wasn't directed at me. He wasn't stabbing me with that comment. But it's the same idea as like, I don't know if I want to trade for something I can do, or that I might do. I'm intrigued by
that makes sense.
Stuff that I'm just blown away by, because I would never think of that, or I would never have come up with that composition, or I could never execute it that well, or like Travis Schlott, I have one of his paintings, and like I'll never be that gifted. I mean, he is just oozing natural like brilliance, and his wife as well is just they're so good. And so from a fanboy standpoint, I want the stuff that I can't do. So we'll have to trade sometime.
Okay.
If you're into that. Don't say what Jeremy Lipton
I don't know if I want to
Don't.
trade with somebody that can paint better than them. No. No, I can't. I actually, I actually have a landscape plein air retreat coming up, and I always joke that it's like the 3 days I go to feel bad about myself. I mean, not that I don't most of the other times, but it's the ego check of like trying to do any landscape. I mean, I love your landscapes and I love your work, and I definitely, I admire when in the same way, and there's that actually tends to be the stuff that in the museums that I am gaga over. Is I love it, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right, like I just can't do. I try, and I like try to emulate. Actually, do you know that artist Ilya Moroknik?
Oh yeah.
He's fabulous, and watching him paint is so fun. And to me, it looks like he comes to the canvas fearless. What he does with the paint and what he does with his color and everything, like it just feels fearless. Meanwhile, I come to the canvas and I'm a ball of anxiety, and I like have to plan everything out, and it feels like I'm wrestling the paint into submission. Meanwhile, he kind of just comes at it boldly, fearlessly. So I actually did a painting in which it was actually a painting of him that a friend had taken while he was modeling for him. And I approached it trying to get into that mindset, like using his approach, trying to embody that fearlessness, the absolute confidence. And I created this painting of him. I call it Alter Ego, but it's ALTAR, Alter Ego. And it was like a very kind of out of body experience. And it was interesting. It was an interesting experience. But I really admire when people, what happens on the canvas and what is left on the canvas has the consistency of paint. So I have almost like a trompe l'oeil, hide the paint tendency where, again, I wrestle the paint into submission, and there can be trompe l'oeil aspects of it, and I'm creating illusions. But I admire so much when the boldness of the paint, like you could like talk about a Sargent, or like, where a stroke says so much, and the movement and the brushwork, and it's very enticing and looks impossible for me.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's always, I think a lot of people probably admire things that they can't do, or feel is beyond them, or just admire things that they wouldn't have thought of. But, last October, I think I was filming in Paris with and I was talking to Travis Schlott, Kate Lehman, Shane Wolf, Sebastian Jupil, and that's the message I came home with hanging out with those guys was I was just so inspired by how fearless they were, both in their willingness to experiment and allow things to just let things go, but also in the subject matter that we were choosing. In Shane's case, the massive size that he was working at, his bold, like just reckless abandon with the paint, and with you, I think, you say you approach it with anxiety. I think I understand what you mean by that in terms of like your process is very clean. It's very tightly rendered, but the fearlessness that I see in your work is in the subject matter. It's in this willingness to throw away conventions of still life and make something that is, again, I've used the phrase already, but totally unexpected. And that, maybe some of that fearlessness is what we were talking about early on, where you don't have to worry about it selling because your income is supplemented in a way, but even then, you still have to set it up and actually execute it, right?
And
you
I think that the anxiety and the
it.
fear, I think, comes in the doing it justice. Because when I know an idea has legs or whatever, I think there's the thought process of, doing the idea justice and not getting to a point where I feel like that's all I know how to, that's all I know how to do, and I can't make it any better. I don't know how to make it better, right? So there's the fear of hitting that point where I'm gonna I always say it's the fear of like, today I'm gonna realize I don't actually know how to paint.
Yeah, that
happens every day, where I'm like, oh, today is gonna be the day where I reach my limitation. And there are days I do reach a limitation where I'm like, I know this could be better, but this is all I know how to do right now, and it's going to have to be what it is. And then I have to go out and figure out either put that thing in another setup or source somebody who can maybe give me some suggestions for it, because most people would be like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's great.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I know that could be better.
Well, we talked about that earlier, I think, in my, together kind of as a group in my class. I was talking about kind of my desperate need for community and feedback, and I was sharing the idea of how the 19th century painters would get together so regularly with for the express purpose of critical review of each other's work, and how that kind of acted as a system of checks and balances, which, in my opinion, is one of the main reasons that we see so many brilliant masters in the past. I think it comes through associations. I think it comes through multiple minds going over one idea, right? If I can have several artists help me comb through the finer points of my painting and help me refine things that might be a little weak in it, I could make better paintings because I'm not doing it alone. And when I go through the museums, that's what I see, or what I feel like I see, is work done by committee, almost.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Certainly individual work and personal work, but it feels like it's been filtered through several editors. And writers have editors, and film has editors, and music has producers, and artists today typically sit in their own closet by themselves and try to do everything by themselves. And I just am desperate to try and change that, at least for me, because I know I can be better if I could just have people helping me look at it differently.
Yeah.
Or the way I put it is, Well, I don't have to say that. The way I think about it is, if I had that help, the weaknesses in my painting aren't because of an inability. It's more because I just missed it. Of all the things there are to think about and all the things to on the checklist to try and make sure they're done properly and well balanced, and the color harmonies and the values and blah blah blah. Out of all of that, there's if there's a million things to do right, I might get 950,000 of them right. But you're judged by the weakest parts of your painting.
Well, I also think it depends on the person viewing it. So I think there can be not a trap, but like we can get into an echo chamber of representational artists. We can get into an echo chamber with our atelier friends.
Yep.
Right. And so while I think some of them conceptually, but mostly you're going to get a lot of technical feedback, which absolutely is necessary. Right. So I that is 100% necessary. And I love having conversations with people about technique and approach to a specific texture or approaching something. But I do think that there's validity in sourcing artists who don't work the way we work.
Absolutely.
And some of the best advice in the way that we can, I think, see our work so much more objectively and in a fresh way is to source comments or commentary or discourse from artists who are looking at work in a different way. And so that could not only just be through a philosophy standpoint, through people who work abstractly or expressionistically or aren't even in a visual art, so to speak, so maybe a musician. So some of the best feedback I've gotten, because I can become solely blinders technique, because I love technique, I love craftsmanship, I love when things are done well. Like that is such a turn on, is when somebody can do something in an incredible way. Like that's awesome. And that's exciting to see. And I love the museum stuff. Like the stuff I get the most excited about is like, how the hell did they do that with frickin' paint, the same paint I'm using, and it looks amazing, right?
You know how hard it is.
I know how hard it is, right?
Yeah.
So technique is one thing, but we can sometimes get blinders on because we're so focused on, well, is the form turning and does this look like dimensional space, where you've lost sight of a larger conceptual issue.
Yeah, because paintings take time, and you have to have such a high level of concentration on the execution, because it never gets easy. Certain things get a little easier, but then other things get harder, right? Like you discover new things that you have to get better at. And so much of your mental attention has to be focused on a proper execution and high level execution, that you can get a little lost in like why the hell you're painting it in the first place.
Right.
And that's one thing I'm trying to
and that's where the idea stage.
Right.
That's where I think, a lot of times I have a group of creatives here in Boston that I meet with every other month. And if I've got an idea where I'm like, I'm stuck on this, I don't know what to do with this. What do you think? I get the best feedback from some of the poets. I get the best feedback from some people who work completely not realistic in this way.
Sure.
And it's, it opens my eyes to things, to problem solving in a way that I would not have expected, and it gives me things to think about.
Yeah. And I'm sure it expands your ability to consider the concept from a different angle. And that's one thing that I'm trying to get much better at and much more deliberate in, is having a real purpose behind each painting, a clear concept before I start anything, a reason why this painting needs to be made over this idea. I have done a lot of things just based on, I think this is pretty. And this would be cool. This would look really cool, and that's okay. I mean, I love, you know, landscape painting for what it is and what it can be. Even in landscape painting, I'm trying to be a little bit more purposeful in my subject matter, but I've done a ton of invented landscapes that were really just meant to be beautiful. I want beautiful color harmony. I want an interesting composition. But I would, if I'm being honest with myself, I would say I kind of look at those as more decorative paintings, which I don't necessarily, I have this problem where I don't, for some reason, respect my own landscapes as much as my figure paintings, because I think, I guess figure painting is harder for me. Figure painting in the landscape, doing multi-figure paintings is astronomically more difficult. So I just have this higher level of respect for that work of mine, and but the compliments I get are like oh, I like your landscapes. Adrian Gottlieb got me once because I was saying, I was kind of explaining that to him. I was like, I'm sick of hearing like I like your landscapes from figure painters, because I want the people that paint figures really well, I want to hear them say they like my figures, and they never say it. And he's like, yeah, but I really like your landscapes.
Well, like, I can tell you right now, my figures are not good. They're they're okay, but
yeah, but you get good at what you do,
right? Well,
right?
exactly.
So I mean, if you have all the ability to do it,
they're there to scratch. Like, I want to do it. I'm gonna do it. There's a lot of problems with them, but like, I just had to do them because there was I wanted to get that out there, and that's it. I'm okay with that because I'm at least satisfied with the thing that I do on a regular basis. Sure. I'm satisfied with that. Like, I know I'm never going to be satisfied with any portrait I ever do.
Yeah.
Like, or figure. I just know that.
But I think everything you do is with great purpose, and that comes through in your work, and that's something, for me, that's inspiring, because I'm really, really trying to be very disciplined in that, and kind of maybe get away from some of the just because it's pretty paintings. And have a much stronger reason for why I'm spending time on this. I think it's just, I have a couple of older students that are, great painters, and they talk about having a few years left, and it kind of gives me it makes me think, what are you leaving? What are you leaving your family? Because when you leave, it's your memory that remains. But for artists, musicians, writers, you're leaving even a little bit more. You're leaving a piece of yourself behind. So my thought is, like, what is it about my paintings that speaks of me?
Is it like, how do you want to be remembered?
Not how I want to be remembered, but if I am remembered, did I give them the proper memory? Did I really? You
don't have a choice about that, unfortunately.
It's true. It's true. But I can. Am I giving my best attempt?
Yeah.
To share what actually is important to me.
Right.
And yes, beautiful landscapes I love. I drive on the freeway and I've constantly got my phone out taking pictures very unsafely. So yes, I love that, but. Is it the most important thing to me? I don't know. In some way, yes. In some way, no. So that's kind of my place of discovery, where I'm trying to figure out, what are those paintings? I just had a thought the other day. I don't even know if I should share it here. No,
I think the answer should be
I'm not
yes.
gonna share it.
If you're not sure, you should.
Yeah,
or maybe not.
I don't know.
Is it not safe for work?
It's safe for work, but I don't know if I want to get public with it. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
But yeah,
post podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about being in Boston, is I called my wife about this. I forget. I know living in Utah, where I live specifically, we have the mountains. Those are beautiful. But there's not a broad culture. There's not a lot going on artistically. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of good places to eat. I mean, there's no, not a lot of great art in museums. And then the architecture's not great. So I've missed that. I know what it's like to live in a place like Florence, where I get that. But then coming to Boston, I'm just immediately remember what it's like to be flooded with ideas when you're surrounded by beauty. When you're surrounded by I'm really inspired by the art, say in the Boston Public Library. I'm inspired by the architecture, and then I'm meeting just fascinating people, and the craziest ideas come to me that are seemed wholly unrelated, but I would never have had that idea if I wasn't walking around these streets looking at this stuff,
Right.
and or walking through the museums and looking at these paintings. I would never have had those ideas, and I think that maybe that's something you could talk to about. I mean, where you came from and how the living here. Do you feel that living in Boston, that you kind of have that head on a swivel, like, gosh, I can't believe I live here, even though, the doldrums of daily life set in no matter where you're at.
Right.
Does Boston, do you feel like that has an influence on your inspiration, on your work?
I think that that Boston in and of itself is, I'm very fortunate to be in a place with a lot of history. And I think the personality of the city fits me very well. I grew up in upstate New York, which is a little bit more suburbia. I didn't feel like I fit in very well there. I always felt like very sheltered, and I just didn't know, a ton of, we never went to art museums. I didn't know any artists growing up. I didn't know anybody who made art a living, a very blue collar upbringing, which I'm actually thankful for, because it does install a drive. I think I was the drive is built into, I have to make this work, right? So nothing was handed down, nothing was handed to me, and I mean, my parents did plenty for me, but it wasn't like they could afford to just let me be an artist. Like, that wasn't even an that wasn't even an option.
Yeah.
It was and I didn't, we never were a family that went to art museums, and we would do just general craft things and scribbling, and then, okay, now you gotta, you're 16, you get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you better go to college, because my parents barely went to college.
Yeah.
And so I went to this very exotic place for college called Rhode Island, which, to me, where I grew up, Rhode Island was amazing.
What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
So it was, kind of a Rust Belt town. Kodak was the big thing going on.
I've been there.
And it's better now, but there really wasn't a lot of culture going on in Rochester, and I didn't know that, right?
Sure.
I just knew this is not exciting.
Yeah.
And you see whatever, you see on TV or whatever, that there's much more exciting places. You just think New York City. So I went to college in Rhode Island, which to me was exotic and amazing, which we all know it's
It's exotic. I haven't been there.
I mean,
it's exotic to
in
me.
the grand scheme of things. It's just it's a small state. And it was okay. I always just tried to paint. They did have RISD, but RISD really wasn't what I needed.
Yeah, sure.
And so when I came up here, I mean, I've been here for 10 years, and I still to this day just love being here, because the head on the swivel, I think, is a fabulous, but it's a head on the swivel for people who who actively seek out those things, right? So you could go through the daily doldrums, but like
And
there's
be blind to,
there's
yeah,
thousands and thousands of people here.
sure.
And so I tend to have a tendency that I always feel like I'm missing out on something, the whole FOMO, fear of missing out thing. I always feel like I am missing out on, like, I'm not the cool person. I'm not, like, I didn't come from, like, a well-off family, and I just wasn't that person. So I'm like, I feel like I'm kind of scrambling
Yeah.
to be part of the cultural scene.
Yeah.
So I just say yes to everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm at the point now in my life where I feel like I can say no to things, but the drive to connect people and to connect them almost on accident, where, like, I just want to be the bystander watching what's happening, right? Like, if this person meets that person, they're going to, like, realize how much they have in common, and then they're going to have cool conversations that I can be a part of. So I'm kind of, like, trying to get, like, the shrapnel of of culture, of putting people together, because, in a way it's a selfish thing. I just think it's so cool, the idea exchanges, so I say yes to everything. I'm a fellow at the St. Botolph Club here, which I feel totally out of place in at the beginning, because these are people I would never be associating with in general, but we have so much in common in terms of what is inspiring and interesting and conversations to have. And so I try to say yes to as many things as I can, to put myself in front of people to learn from, because I know how much I don't know.
Yeah.
The more the better you get at something, the more you realize you don't know.
Sure.
And so I try to like just get myself in that orbit.
Yeah.
So I can just get the rest of it, get the shrapnel of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes you perfect for the school. It's what, you're a connector. You're someone who's endlessly curious, and you have endless energy. And I mean, a lot of that shows up in your work. It's like it's almost like a chaos of worlds coming together that kind of, like, just molds into this ball of energy that you are. And I mean, I'm inspired to be around you. I think most people, when they meet you,
I find it helps if you
feel.
have a very unhealthy work-life balance.
Yeah. Well, you don't have.
It's
you
not.
Don't have any,
it's probably not great, but
you don't have any kids, right?
No.
Do you have plans?
No, not at the moment. I mean, in my brain, I'm like, maybe I'll, like, adopt some adults at some point.
Really?
I'm not a big fan of babies. Like, I like
babies
like
are
3
great,
and up.
But if you could avoid the teenage years.
Yeah, I like my niece and nephew are I have a couple nieces and nephews, and they're wonderful. But, like, if I could adopt, like, maybe, like, an adult.
Yeah.
An adult who, like, way. Can take care of themselves. And no,
pays their own bills.
I like as much as I have the desire to want to be, like, a parental figure in a way, I also feel like there's so many problems with the world. And I stress about so much, and I have a hard time understanding what it would be like to be. I get paralyzed with anxiety sometimes, and panic attacks, right? So as much as I would like to, be able to show another human what is so amazing about the world and all the possibilities, and I don't know if that's, like, totally in the cards. Things could change, but I just feel like part of what I do with my painting is part of what we do is we try to show what we find amazing. We try to show what we find is interesting, mysterious, which it's our way of putting something up and saying, do you see this? Do you see this thing? Do you see this person? Do you see this scene? Do you see it the way that I see it, or I'm trying to show you the way that, and
That's
what
an interesting kind of it's something I think a little bit about, because I have friends who are single, and that comes with certain time freedoms, and financial kind of makes it a little easier. I have friends who are married, and maybe that makes financial a little easier, but it comes with a little bit more time requirements. Friends that have, like my friend Katie Lydiard. Do you know Katie Lydiard?
I don't know her personally, but I know of her work.
Yeah. So like she just she was dead set against having kids, and then got to the early mid 30s and was like, well, if we're gonna do it, we should do it. Anyway, she has two, and it just affects so much your painting life and your life altogether, obviously. I've got five, and I think about, I see people that are single, and I'm like, ooh, young, single, and like finding this education like super early, and I'm like, ooh, I wish I could like go back and do that, because we got married young, we had kids young, and it just brought a lot of difficulties and joys, of course, that are very different. And I think you're able in part to commit all of this time and energy, and I mean, not just, it has something to do with it. And if you were to family life, everything, it all plays into what you do, decisions you make, how much you can commit to things. And I think it's I mean, it's such a big thing, but I find myself loving what you do, and the fact that you are so dedicated, and that you're willing to spend so much time helping other people, building the school, and that you've found that balance between doing that and managing all of the things that you manage, and still being like hyper productive in making things that I love to look at.
I mean, I think there's an illusion of hyper productivity. I went back through the past couple of years, and I think on average I finished like five like significant paintings a year.
Sure.
But I think the illusion of like what I post online makes it seem like I'm painting every day.
Yeah.
But as much as I'm a very down to earth, I'm absolute science based and very like fact based. I have this kind of woo woo belief that you find what you need, like the universe kind of presents to you what you need when you need it. So had I discovered this type of training when I was in my 20s, I would not have done it. And that's because it's boring. It's not interesting. And you have to start with drawing, like all the things that I've been like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Like, I want to do like what I want to do. Right. But what I had to do was find out that I can't do it on my own. I had to struggle, and try for 10 years on my own, that there's only so much you can reinvent the wheel.
Sure. I
didn't find this till I was 30. Yeah. I was in my 30s. I had an established career, and I really believe that there's not that there's like a conscious universe. I don't believe in that, but I think that patterns happen because certain things fall into place at the right time. And whether like you have kids already and you find it and you're willing to make time, it's because you're desperate enough to want it. To put, like, I had to be desperate enough to be like, I don't care if these people tell me to shine their shoes to get this good. If I can do that, if I can do the stuff that's on the walls, I will shine your shoes. It's the whole wax on, wax off Karate Kid stuff. I really believe it. And because it's hard. It's hard, and it's slow, and it's boring, and it sucks. Yeah. It sucks. Like, I hated the Bargs, but I will tell every single person who comes into this school that in order for me to do what I do now, I had to learn the lessons of the Bargs. Yeah, sure. I had to be doing cast drawing. Yeah. I had to do it. Like, there's no way that I would have just figured that out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. And I've met artists that haven't studied academically, and they figured a lot out by themselves. Things made sense to them that didn't intrinsically make sense to me.
I'm not a natural.
Oh, me neither.
If I showed you my work before ARA,
it would look like mine.
I have documentation, and I've shared it online.
I
bet mine was worse.
I had some outside, like I kept a portrait or a figure painting I did.
Do you need more?
Yeah, I'll take a little more. Thank you. I had a figure painting I did that I totally labored over at the end of BYU, and next to the first portrait I did at the Florence Academy, just as an example of like here's what good training can do for the average person.
Yeah.
And I am absolutely the average person. And so
I think I'm below the average person.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something you absolutely have to dedicate to, and people around here, or anyone who moves here, is lucky that you're as dedicated as you are to not only your own craft, but to the passing on of that information through the school.
And that's why I think it's so important to let people know and to just share your experience, because how often do you get people who say, oh, well, I don't really have a lot of natural talent. I can't draw a stick figure, right?
Sure.
So we all know that that's like the most common thing. And this is why I think honesty is so important in what we do, because it is a very high skill set. It's a very high technical skill set. But if we're honest with ourselves, it's not that we're magical. There's no magic. There's no sorcery happening. And the intention of I'm sharing a process of a painting on my social media where I'm documenting and sharing the time, how long it takes.
Right.
This painting has over 70 hours in it right now, and it's probably half done.
Yeah, sure.
I think there's the honesty. I want to show the man behind the curtain. Because so often, I mean, I thought that I was growing up and I'm like, I'm not good. I can't do it. I'm not going to be that person. But here I am. And you don't have to be amazing out of the gate. You don't have to be good. That is what you have teachers for. A teacher shouldn't be like, you should already be good, and I'm just going to stand here and watch you. No, I'm going to come to class, and you're going to show me what to do. And that's what I think technical training offers people.
And I think talent, really, if we could...
Sorry, I just got a little preachy.
Talent does exist in the world. I mean, as hard as most NBA players work, they're not going to be as good as Michael Jordan.
Oh, my gosh.
But
it doesn't mean it's not possible.
Well, it's not really possible to be as good as Michael Jordan.
But you can still be a basketball player.
No, what I mean is people, the talent, I think, is the willingness to dedicate. And if you have that, you can figure most things out. And this is no different. This is, talent certainly separates artists at the higher levels, right? There are people that stuff makes sense to that will probably never make sense to me.
Right.
But, painting with Jeremy Lipking, and he's saying like, oh, this is interesting. Why do you do this? Because I have a reason for doing everything. I calculate it. He's like, I don't know. It made sense. And I'm just like, God damn it. I hate, it's like Salieri. I hate that I know you, because I know enough to know I'll never be that.
Right.
So talent does exist.
But don't you think that's part of our cultural problem in which
it exists everywhere.
Okay,
sure.
So you can't be the best, right?
Yeah.
You can't be Michael Jordan. Does that mean you shouldn't
Yeah.
just do you?
Right.
No. And that's the beautiful thing about art is everybody has something to say.
Well, and there's a joy
Everybody
in knowing.
has something to make.
There's a joy and a humility in knowing there's always somebody cooler than you.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a Ben Folds song? There's always someone cooler than you. There's always somebody better than you.
There's a lot of people cooler. Yeah.
And so good. There's always something to figure out. There's always somebody to look to who you can learn something from. But it can be learned. I think that the first step is a willingness to dedicate, because no matter what you do, I tell this to my kids, even if you choose your life, even if you live a life of passion and choose the thing that you want to do, most of it is hard work. It's some fun. Starting a painting's fun. The idea, coming up with the idea is super fun.
Yeah.
Making the painting is hard. Finishing the painting is fun.
Yes.
Right?
The sandwich. It's the fun sandwich.
Yeah.
It's a shit sandwich.
That's right.
Fun shit. Fun.
And if you're willing to do the work, even the work, I mean, thank God we get to do this, right?
Yeah.
Because it certainly isn't roofing in the summer as a redhead.
Right.
We're very lucky to do the boring stuff that we do. Anyway, so I want, could you tell people where to find you, website? I mean, we'll post this.
Yeah.
But you have a growing Instagram.
I do.
And you're what?
So my website is juliebcreative.com, just the letter B. And that's because juliebeck.com was taken when I was making my website. Julie Be Creative. So Julie Be Creative is actually my handle across most of my social media. So I believe Facebook and YouTube. Actually, no, YouTube is Julie Beck. I have a ton of free videos where I try to just give useful information for people. But my website has most of my work and available work and studies and things like that. But I also have...
Can they purchase right off your website, or they email you?
They usually email me. I keep a Google Photos album of all my smaller studies. And I always try to make pieces that are all ranges of prices, because I do think it's important to create pieces that anybody of any budget level could afford.
Sure.
Trying to keep it as equitable as, not equitable, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
On my website, I have a Google Photos album. I also have just my regular paintings for sale that people can contact me, but I'm also showing with a few galleries. I show with Bowersock in Provincetown. I show at Copley Society here in Boston. I also show with RLS down in Charleston. And my social media is all Julie Be Creative. And and I actually have a blog on I started to blog. I think blogs are going to become a thing again. But I'm trying to do it for my permanent information. So social media is very fleeting, and kind of the feed, things can get lost in the feed. So I started redoing a blog, so where I just post permanent information like art tools that I use and stages of paintings and things like that. So I try to put out as much free and useful information as I can, just to keep it accessible.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much for, one, allowing me to come back to Boston. I love the city. And letting me teach here. It's been really fun. I still have one day of exhaustion, but it's always a pleasure to be here and talk to you and see your work in person.